Red alert! A human battleship just violated galactic law. The alarms blared across the command deck of the Zifrin Dominion's border station. Crimson warning lights pulsed in rhythm with the urgent wails of the defense system. Admiral VRTH, a seasoned veteran of the Dominion's Navy, narrowed his slit-pupil eyes as he read the incoming data stream. Unknown human vessel detected, unauthorized entry into restricted space. Designation battleship class, configuration unknown. A chill settled over the bridge. Humanity. They were primitive compared to the Dominion, barely scratching the surface of deep space travel. The last known human warships were outdated, sluggish things, more useful for policing their own system than posing a threat to an empire spanning hundreds of light years. Yet here it was, a single warship the size of a dreadnought, moving with impossible precision through the asteroid fields that marked the Dominion's outer borders. It should have been torn apart. No known human ship had the maneuvering thrusters necessary for such a feat. Vroth leaned forward, his mandibles clicking in irritation. "Open a channel," he ordered. A subordinate complied and static filled the speakers. Then a voice, clear, cold. "Human. This is the UNS Revenant. You are advised to disengage all weapon systems and allow passage." The bridge fell silent, a human ship issuing commands to the Dominion, the arrogance. Vroth snarled, "Human vessel, you are in violation of Dominion space. Power down immediately or you will be destroyed." There was a pause, then the voice returned, still calm. "If you could destroy us, Admiral, you would have already." The ship continued its approach, undeterred. VRTH's claws curled into the armrests of his command chair. "Target their engines, disable them. If they refuse to comply, obliterate them." His officers obeyed, and the station's turrets locked onto the unknown battleship. But the instant they fired, something impossible happened. The Revenant blinked. Not warped, not accelerated. It vanished and reappeared several kilometers closer in an instant, as if reality itself had bent to its will. The incoming plasma bolts passed harmlessly through the empty space where it had once been. Gasps filled the bridge. No Dominion ship had that kind of technology. Not even the core world fleets possessed instantaneous movement. Then a new alarm blared, a boarding signature. Vroth turned just in time to see his security officers collapse, their bodies crumpling under the weight of unseen force. The air shimmered, and then the humans appeared. They weren't wearing any visible armor, but their forms were covered in sleek dark plating that pulsed with unnatural energy. Their faces were hidden behind smooth, reflective visors. One of them, the tallest, stepped forward. A simple gesture and the station's weapon systems shut down. "You have something we need," the figure said. Vroth bared his teeth. "What are you?" The human tilted their head slightly. "The future." VR's mind raced. This was impossible. Humanity was supposed to be behind the Dominion in technology, yet here they were, standing on his bridge, shutting down his weapons, rendering his forces useless. The human in dark plating took another step forward. Even without a visible weapon, something about them radiated power, not brute strength, but the quiet, unshakable confidence of a predator in a room full of prey. Vroth's claws twitched toward the emergency override panel on his command chair, a last resort protocol. If he could activate it, he could purge the bridge with plasma, incinerating everyone inside, including himself if necessary. The human's visor shifted, not physically, but something in it pulsed, as if they could see his thoughts. "You're considering self-destruction," the human said smoothly. "That won't work." VRTH snarled, baring his fangs. "You think I fear death, human?" The figure remained still. Then, with a mere flick of their wrist, the lights in the command center dimmed, and every control panel in the room rewrote itself. Dominion symbols flickered and changed, text lines converting into strange, unknown code before stabilizing into something Vroth had never seen before. The entire station had been hacked. Impossible. "You don't fear death," the human agreed, "but your empire does." Vroth's throat tightened. He forced himself to stand tall. "You are one ship, one battleship. No matter what trickery you possess, you cannot stand against the full might of the Dominion." The human was silent for a moment, then they turned slightly, raising a hand to their helmet. "Proceed." From the station's external cameras, the crew saw them. Dozens of blinding rifts tore open across the void. Not warps, not hyperdrives, something else entirely. and from them emerged more human vessels, sleek black, moving without the clunky thrusters of lesser ships. Silent, perfectly aligned. Each one was bigger than the last. This, one of Vroth's subordinates whispered, voice shaking. This wasn't a scouting ship. It was a warning. Vroth's blood ran cold. The Revenant had entered Dominion space alone, and the Dominion had dared to challenge it. Now humanity had responded. The human leader took a step closer to VRTH, their voice barely above a whisper. You wanted to see what we were capable of, Admiral. Now you will. And with that, the war began. The silence that followed was heavier than any gravity well VRTH had ever encountered. Every officer on the bridge, every soldier, every technician, each of them sat frozen as their screens displayed the impossible. The human fleet had arrived, not just a few ships, hundreds. And these were not the crude, outdated vessels the Dominion had classified as low threat. These were something else. Their hulls gleamed with a blackness that devoured the starlight around them, absorbing sensor pings as if they refused to be read. No drive signatures, no visible weapons, and yet they moved with purpose, not like ships blindly following orders, but like predators closing in for the kill. Vroth felt his mandibles tighten. This was not a battle, this was an execution. A lieutenant at the control station suddenly cried out, her scaled hands shaking over the terminal. Admiral, they're inside our network. Our defenses are shutting down. Vroth turned sharply. Impossible. We run a closed system. Human technology shouldn't even be capable of interfacing with. The lights flickered again. Then, in perfect unison, every turret, missile battery, and shield generator in the sector powered down. An eerie, absolute silence followed. Vroth clenched his fists. How? The human leader on his bridge tilted their head, observing him. Their expression was still unreadable behind that gleaming visor, but their body language was relaxed, almost bored. Your systems were child's play, the human said simply. You built your empire on brute force. We built ours on understanding the very fabric of reality. Vroth snarled, stepping forward. You think you can intimidate me, human? I have commanded Dominion fleets for decades. I have burned worlds that refuse to kneel. I have annihilated entire species for defying the Dominion, and you think I will kneel to you. The human was quiet for a moment. Then they stepped forward too, slowly, deliberately. VRTH expected a weapon, a threat, a display of power. Instead, the human simply said, You misunderstand. We're not here for you to kneel. We're here to ensure you don't get back up. The words hit like a plasma blast. Vroth's subordinates exchanged looks, fear crawling up their spines. Even the most battle-hardened among them knew this was different. Then the human raised a hand to their helmet again. Proceed. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the Dominion's fleet exploded. Not from human weapons, not from enemy fire. They detonated from within. VRTH watched, horrified, as the massive Dominion dreadnoughts in high orbit around the station burst into fiery ruins, their hulls splitting apart like they had been unmade at a molecular level. What have you done? He whispered. The human didn't answer right away. They turned, glancing at the display screen that showed the destruction outside. Then they said, Your mistake wasn't letting us enter your space. Your mistake was assuming we weren't already here. The realization hit Vroth like a hammer to the skull. They hadn't just hacked the station, they had infiltrated the Dominion's entire fleet. This had been planned, not a battle, an extermination. Vroth's claws trembled. He had fought in countless wars, crushed resistance movements, outmaneuvered rivals, but never had he faced an enemy that fought like this. How long? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The human turned back to face him. We have been inside your networks for years, learning, watching, preparing. VRTH felt sick. The Dominion's military prided itself on strength, on control, and yet the humans had slipped beneath their defenses without a single shot fired, until now. You can't win, Vroth growled, clinging to the last shreds of his pride. The Dominion controls thousands of worlds, we. Not anymore, the human interrupted. They gestured at the screens where Dominion worlds, entire planets, were going dark one by one, each losing power, each surrendering before a single human ship had even arrived. Your people are smart, the human continued. Smarter than your leaders. They're choosing surrender because they know fighting us is suicide. Vroth staggered back, gripping his chair. His empire was crumbling in real time. The human leader tilted their head again, studying him. Then they finally drew a weapon, a small, sleek, glowing device that fit into the palm of their hand. Not a gun, something else. You, however, the human said, voice filled with something resembling pity, don't get the luxury of surrender. And with a simple press of a button, the bridge filled with light. Pain. For the first time in decades, Admiral VRTH felt true pain. It wasn't the sharp agony of a blade or the searing burn of plasma. It was something deeper, something that crawled into his very being and shredded his mind apart one thought at a time. His vision fractured, his body convulsed, and his consciousness wavered. It felt like every nerve in his body was being rewritten, every muscle forced into submission by an unseen force. His thoughts scattered like dust in a solar storm. And then it stopped. Vroth collapsed onto the deck, his breath ragged. The weight of whatever had invaded him receded, but the sensation lingered, like his mind had been touched by something beyond his comprehension. He forced himself to look up. The human leader still stood there, calm, unreadable behind their visor. Their small device, whatever it had been, was now inactive, though the air around it still crackled. Vroth tried to speak, but his throat refused to obey. His limbs trembled. His body felt wrong. What have you done?" he rasped, barely recognizing his own voice. The human tilted their head slightly, as if contemplating whether or not to answer. Then, with the same eerie calm, they said, "We unmade your chains." Vroth bared his teeth. You think you've broken me? I am Dominion, I do not break." The human didn't react to the outburst. They simply gestured at the surrounding officers, Vroth's own people, who stood frozen, watching the exchange in stunned silence. "Do you feel it?" the human asked, addressing the bridge crew now. "The absence." Vroth frowned, but then he saw it in their faces, the hesitation, the confusion, the fear. One of the officers, a younger lieutenant, stumbled backward, clawed hands clutching at his temples. His breathing was erratic, his pupils dilated. "It's gone," he whispered. I don't understand, I don't feel it anymore." VRTH's mind reeled. The human took a slow step forward. "Your empire was built on more than just fear, Admiral. It was built on control, mental control. Your rulers bound every officer, every soldier, every citizen into the Dominion's will. That's why your people never rebelled. That's why your troops fought to the death without question." Vroth's blood ran cold. How did they know? No outsider had ever understood the Dominion's true grip on power. Their empire wasn't just held together by force, it was enforced through centuries of carefully engineered neural conditioning. Every officer, every citizen was linked to the Dominion's will. It wasn't mind control, not exactly, but a constant, unshakable presence in their thoughts. A pressure, a guiding force, the will of the Dominion itself. And now, Vroth reached into his mind, searching, desperate for that presence, but he found nothing. A gaping void where it should have been. Panic set in. His claws scraped against the cold metal floor. He tried to force himself to stand, but his body felt disconnected, as if he no longer knew how to function without that guiding force. Vroth's voice was a low snarl, but it lacked its usual power. "You severed us." The human nodded once. "Yes." The bridge officers staggered, realization dawning across their faces. Without the Dominion's mental grip, without the chains that had bound their thoughts since birth, they were free. And it terrified them. "No," one of them whispered. "No, this is wrong. I don't know what to do." Vroth watched in horror as his officers began to crumble. Some clutched their heads, overwhelmed by the sudden silence in their minds. Others backed away from their stations, as if the very idea of acting on their own free will was too much to bear. The Dominion had not raised leaders, it had raised servants. Without orders, without the constant guiding force, they were directionless. The Dominion didn't rule by strength, it ruled by enslavement, and the humans had just torn it all away. Vroth forced himself to his feet, rage burning through his veins. You think this makes you victorious?" His voice was raw, venomous. "You think you've won because you cut our leashes?" The human remained unmoved. "You have doomed them," Vroth spat, gesturing toward his faltering officers. "They are not like you, they were made to serve. They will break without the Dominion's guidance." The human finally moved. They stepped closer, too close, until VRTH could feel the unnatural presence radiating from them. Then, in a voice that was almost gentle, the human said, "Then let them break." Vroth's breath caught. "Let them break," the human continued. Let them shatter, let them fall apart piece by piece, because only when something breaks can it be rebuilt into something stronger. Vroth's fists clenched, claws scraping against his own palms. His empire, his entire empire, was collapsing around him, and these humans, these creatures who had once been dismissed as insignificant, had brought it all down without ever firing a single real shot. "You are monsters," Vroth whispered. The humans simply turned away. "No," they said, "we are free." And then the command deck doors slid open, revealing more of them. More humans in those impossible suits, walking with the kind of certainty only a conqueror could possess. VRTH knew in that moment that the Dominion was finished, and humanity had won. Vroth stood in the wreckage of his own existence. His empire, once a monolith of control and dominance, was crumbling before his eyes. The bridge of his command station, once a symbol of authority, had become nothing more than a prison. The human leader had turned their back on him, their attention now on their soldiers. They spoke in their strange, clipped language, efficient, calm, as if this wasn't the single most devastating moment in galactic history. VRTH swallowed his fury. His entire body trembled, but he forced himself upright, straightened his posture, and faced the enemy. "If you believe you can break the Dominion with this single act," he snarled, "then you are fools." The human didn't turn back immediately. Instead, they adjusted something on their wrist, their visor reflecting the pale red emergency light still flickering around the room. Finally, they spoke. "We never planned to break the Dominion in a single act, Admiral.